So in the study, we looked at the critical success index. We looked at sick leave per hours per month per employee. And then we looked at the employee satisfaction from a survey that was conducted by Sirota of 12,000 employees. It was conducted as part of a diversity strategy. There are approximately 130 multiple choice questions, and it was administered back in 2002. So we controlled several variables thought to affect tornado warning performance accuracy were statistically controlled for. We controlled for employee tenure, education level, number of employees at each site, number of tornado events, F-scale, and it was F-scale back then when we did this. And then we viewed that technology and training opportunities were comparable across offices. Employee tenure gets into that retirement issue where, in the sick leave, because some of the older employees had the older system, forget what it's called, where if they didn't take sick leave, they got a benefit from it. So we statistically controlled for that. So the basic research question is, if you have this bell curve of performance across all these WFOs, so how do you explain this variation? Kind of fundamental question. And typically we approach this from a strictly atmospheric science perspective. So results, out of the 149 questions, 131, 88% were positively correlated to CSI. The null hypothesis of a random relationship between SFA results and CSI can be rejected with an enormous degree of confidence. So this was well beyond just coincidence that these things. Of the 18 correlations that were negative, none were significant at the 0.05 level, and of the 131 that were, 27 were significant at that level. So let's look at some of those that correlated. So these are the highest correlates of tornado warning performance. Actually, sick leave was the biggest one. So, and it's a negative correlation there. So the idea is that where you have anomalous sick leave, you have lower tornado warning performance. Anomalously high sick leave. Now, of the questions, it's just interesting. The top question was, my last performance appraisal was on schedule, correlated at 0.42. Next one was, reasonable accommodations are made for persons with disabilities, 0.38. And then, I know the process for voicing a complaint or filing a grievance through the union, 0.36. And then, my work practices and procedures that are no longer needed are eliminated. I understand the relationships between the NOAA line staff offices. Differences among individuals are understood. Diverse groups participate in the development of performance measures where I work. The results of the 1998 SFA were used constructively by management. There was a previous survey done, and the idea was that the groups got together and then attempted to address the concerns. So offices where they felt that this wasn't done very well, so this was correlated. Offices that attempted to do this, apparently that was correlated, etc. So those were the highest correlating items from the study. Sure.
Top one there. Did y'all also, because some of the FOs are in remote locations, I mean, they're not in a major metropolitan area. Are y'all planning on going back and looking at the accessibility of healthcare, namely like 24-hour clinics? Because with them being on shift work, they may not be able, if it's only a 9 to 5 availability of care, that may be a factor of why they're not getting better because they're on shift.
Well, I'm going to speak more to the sick leave in a minute. We haven't done that, and I'm not sure we will, but let me speak to the sick leave in a minute. So the regression analysis showed that nearly half of the differences in the WFO's performance are accounted by 4 variables. Sick leave, 20%, and these 3 questions, and then the rest is unknown, okay? So what's going on in that other half, we have to come up with some theories. So my colleagues at the Sirota company, which has done this kind of research for over 30 years, they helped come up with their model. This is their model. So what they glommed onto was a kind of like performance enablement employee relations piece, so that these questions here is where you're seeing the contribution from performance and contribution through employee relationships, and the sick leave is figuring in here. So that's a model. Now to the sick leave. So if you look specifically at the sick leave question and the correlation with sick leave, what we found was that there was a pattern that emerged here. So there was questions on work group cooperation and teamwork. So within work groups and between work groups. So where you had good, strong answers in this area, you tended to have lower sick leave. And supervisor behavior. So if the supervisor was seen as responsive to employee ideas and fair and supportive and having a good relationship with the union, you also had lower sick leave. And then performance and diversity played a part as well. So WFO culture has a strong and consistent impact on sick leave, which then ultimately seems to play into performance, at least in tornado warnings. Now, the company, Sirota, who had been working on this for 30 years, had long hypothesized the sick leave would be an indicator of healthy or non-healthy work environments, but they've never been able to see it. So the first time that it showed up like this was this study. And, so the question could be answered by the fact that sick leave is the only sort of discretionary leave in weather service that a person, when they either are really sick or don't want to come into work, can call in and not come in. Every other annual leave is all scheduled weeks or months in advance. So perhaps that's the reason, that if somebody really just doesn't want to show up to work, the only way they can do that, they just can't call in, I'm taking annual leave. They can only take sick leave. So how does this relate to, the sort of agency goals and things? So this was back in 2002, 2003. So this was the CSI trend line. We actually don't have CSI as a metric, but for purposes of this. So what we did was we just took the offices and created a culture index, which is essentially just combining the answers to the 3 survey questions. And then what you see is that if you look at the offices with the high sort of good culture, and their CSI is well above the national average. In fact, it was better than the goal that was set out for years down the road. So that's a kind of surprising thing, because it has nothing to do with tornadoes or weather service operations or AWIPs or 88Ds or et cetera. It's completely divorced from those factors. So if you wanted to know, who was doing the best in 2003, you could based on this result, you say just look at the answers to 3 questions on this survey, and you'll know who's doing the best. Okay, so that was 2003. Conclusions that we got from that were improvements in technology and advancements in science are extremely important to improve tornado warning performance. They promise to raise the performance of all offices. In addition, we found that leadership in individual offices has a demonstrable impact on performance, and that the goal that the Weather Service had set out in tornado warnings could be achieved just attending to those cultural variables. So where there's a high performance culture in place, a better job is done carrying out the Weather Service mission. Whereas a high performance culture is in place, the cost of carrying out this mission is reduced through lower sick leave. So the results showed that the Weather Service should focus on aligning management practices in all its offices with those that foster a culture of high performance. An improvement strategy based only on science and technology without an aggressive human relations component is likely to fall short of the mark. So this is sort of like a business case for the non-technical people training side of the business that some of us have long desired to see more of.